The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host and producer, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Otto Los. Otto, friend, volunteer, all-around star of PI. Yeah. I mean, really, the face of the
Only
PI.
Because of you.
Oh, please. We're a good duo. And Otto, this is our last live show of 2025, which is crazy. Another year in the books for us.
Last year.
It really was. It really is. It
like
just seems
my father
to be.
always said, the older you get, the faster
It's
they go.
very true. I completely agree because I feel like we were just doing this. So, but here we are. So it's going to be a celebratory episode. And of course, we have Melissa Katz, who is with the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center, Senior Director of Programs and Services, and Emma Fogarty, who is the Manager of Caregiver Services. And we're talking about how to support the dementia caregiver around the holidays and to support the caregiver also, I think, is important to do. You know, this is a topic that certainly comes up often on this show. And, you know, I think unfortunately, people are, handed certain cards, but we always seem to find, and it comes up, is preparing and kind of, getting ahead of things, kind of helps alleviate some of the stressfulness of it. So thank you both for joining us. LIAD is such a wonderful partner of Project Independence. Melissa just presented at our advisory. We were talking about it on the show. So let's just start with the basics about, what LIAD is and the services.
Absolutely. So we are the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center. We were founded in actually 1988 up in Port Washington. 5 women were taking care of their parents, realized they needed some help and assistance, resources. So they founded the center. At the time, we were the Long Island Alzheimer's Foundation, or LIAF. We were known for about 30 years. We then moved to be a little bit more centrally located, but we were still in town in North Hempstead, which is great. So we're in Westbury since 2017. And then we actually changed our name in 2019 to the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center, because we would get calls all the time to say, my loved one has vascular dementia or frontal temporal lobe dementia. Like, can we still use your services? And the answer was always yes. So we wanted to be, more like all encompassing. And I think that change was really great for us. So we have a lot of great hands-on programs for both the diagnosed and the family caregiver. And that's how we're a little bit different from some other organizations. We really focus on both because it is truly a family disease. Right. We need everyone needs all hands on deck. So we're there to support, both the diagnosed and their loved ones going through this with them.
An important thing is Alzheimer's and dementia. A lot of people, I don't think, understand that Alzheimer's is a form of dementia.
Yes.
Dementia is the top level, and then there's different kinds of dementia.
That is probably the number one question we get when we do, Emma and myself do a lot of presentations for the community. And it's the number one question we get. What is the difference? So absolutely, dementia is this umbrella term, right? It's a condition, not a specific disease, where you have the memory loss, the personality changes, right? Declining cognition. And then under that are the different forms. So Alzheimer's is the most common cause. And then you have the vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal, and there are actually like hundreds and hundreds of even, subforms and different types. So,
as I see it, LIAD is not trying to paint a rosy picture about either one of those, dementia or Alzheimer's, but you're trying to get people through it. Period.
Yes.
It can go for years or whatever
years.
Of time.
Exactly. You can cycle through quickly in a couple years. People can live with it for 20 years. Exactly. So because there's no cure, we like to really help from pre-diagnosis through end stage and even now bereavement services as well through every stage of the disease.
Which means also family, whoever may go through it for 20 years as well.
Yep. Exactly.
As you pointed out, it's definitely, I've had some exposure with family, and it's, not a good thing, but you have to try to figure out how to survive and get through it. And I think people like Liad are important when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's really what we try to do, right? And what we have through our hands-on programs and services. So families, it takes a village to live with this disease. And we find that through drop-off programs. So we have a day program Monday through Saturday, 10 to 2. So similar to a senior center, but it's a little bit more, structured to be able to be accommodating to those with Alzheimer's and dementia in all stages. So we have early, moderate, and later stage programming available. We have buses to pick, people up, and we cover really most of Nassau County, which is amazing. So that families really do get that relief to attend their own appointments, take care of themselves, do what they need to do around the house, rest, take a nap, right? Maybe they were up all night if there's some child.
Well, that's what's so nice, I think, too. The fact that you have a Saturday is also included that. A lot of these programs are like Monday through Friday, and I reasonably so. But I think having that Saturday, has to be so huge for the caregiver, because that's like you really are like free to, kind of have like a weekend.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of, we call them participants that come to our center. They go to other programs even during the week, which is great, right? We have a lot of different partnering organizations, and then they just come to us on Saturday, and that's good too.
Yeah. Let me ask you now, not everybody is inclined to go in that kind of path, all right? So the difficulty of trying to get the person, by the caregiver, to get the person who has the problem, any ideas on how you might go about doing that?
That's such a great question. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
That's a great question. It comes up a lot in, intakes and when I'm talking with family members, and they're getting a lot of pushback, usually from their loved one on, not wanting to go to a program or not wanting to do something like this. And we'll work with them any way we can. So we've done things where, we structure it more as a volunteer position where our participant, more feels like they're coming to help out or volunteer, they have more of a purpose and the reason that they're there, or even just kind of giving them tasks to do while they're with us. If, they did a lot of clerical work and they worked in an office, giving them some things to fill out or paperwork or just like little things to make them feel useful while they're there. So they don't necessarily feel like they're attending, a day program. They may feel like they're a volunteer, that they're working there as well. And that usually helps people feel more comfortable to come to programs.
Yeah. And it doesn't just have to be that 4-hour day to start too. We have families that start with 2 hours or even the 1-hour option. So we have caregiver support groups for the community members, and maybe they come just for that 1 hour of program, sit and enjoy music in the afternoon during Emma's 1 o'clock Thursday group, for example, for family caregivers. So that's a way to expose them and get more comfortable. And then maybe over time, they increase a little bit. That's one way.
That's the caregiver
that we can do it, the caregiver side. So they're able to utilize
both
two programs at the same time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, for caregivers, like you have a lot of programs we're going to get into, is there like a primer, like an orientation caregiver session, like where you show up for an hour or 2 hours and
Good question.
Yeah.
So we have a couple different options that way. So some people like to just talk with us over the phone first, do a consultation, go over everything we have. There's also an option to do that in person. So it'd be one-on-one with Emma or myself, or we're actually a team of 5 licensed social workers. So that would be an option. So it's not necessarily a group course that way, but a way to get oriented, learn about other programs, that we have, find the best fit, because we also have an in-home program as well. So we find that, yes, the day program may not be the best option for someone. They could be even homebound for another, for more physical reasons, or even for the cognitive reasons, or the social setting just isn't for them, and that's okay too. So we actually have an in-home program, which is a great introduction to receiving services also, because it's one of our paid trained staff members, not a volunteer, that goes into the home for 2 hours. And it feels almost like rent a daughter, rent a granddaughter, right? Like a friendly visitor that way. And they do activities and games. And then the bonus, of course, is that the family member can run out, run an errand, do what they want to do for those 2 hours. And it's a short period of time too. So sometimes families start with that program, and then we try to get them into the
What
center,
what
but
would be
that's
the
an option.
qualifications like
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get into that? Like if you're
Sure.
the different stages, stage 1, 2, whatever. I
Yeah.
remember somebody being involved with the ADLs, the activities of daily
Yeah.
living. Uh, like in order to get long-term care insurance,
Yep.
you have to fail 2 of the 6 questions.
Right.
Is there such a thing like that for uh, the respite program, for
Oh,
example?
good question. So the in-home respite program, the qualifications we have currently, because we are partially funded through Nassau County Office for the Aging, is that the diagnosed is 60 and older, or not necessarily has to have an Alzheimer's or a dementia, right? Diagnosis. We can't be in the home the same time as like a paid home health aide, right? Because then there's not a need for that respite. And then we actually, for that program, we can't be in the home if there are too many ADLs or activities of daily living that they need help with, because we're not licensed individuals that are coming in. It's more social and like a companion, for example. So I go in and do an assessment, make sure that it's a safe and a safe sort of program for them to be in, that they can be alone with our companion for the 2 hours. And then with the day program, we have people that need help with toileting, absolutely feeding, and we do what we can for as long as we can. But if we find that it is a safer option for them to also come with an aide or companion, that we will require that after a certain time, because we are social. They're both social programs and not medical programs.
I think a lot of people don't know about that ADL business.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
found out somehow along the way with family long-term care insurance. You figure, oh, you just call long-term care insurance.
Yep.
No, it don't work like that.
Yep.
You have to have a failure of several of them, depending on the company and the policy and whatever.
Yeah.
And to kind of speak to what you said about like qualifying for programs when it comes to our day program, really the only qualification we have at all is that somebody has some sort of a cognitive diagnosis. So whether or not it's a mild cognitive impairment or they're just experiencing cognitive symptoms and a doctor can sign off on that, they don't need to have, any difficulty with any of their ADLs or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean,
which is huge.
The mystery question would be, well, when do you go from mild cognitive impairment to step 2 or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a black and white answer.
No, unfortunately not.
Creeps in there.
Yep, and that goes with the progression in general. Like, some people can progress over the course of 2 years, right? Maybe it's 2 years for every stage. Other people can cycle through, unfortunately, more quickly, or someone could have a mild cognitive impairment diagnosis for 10 years and sort of stay there, right? Like it really depends on the person. They call it a snowflake disease, right? That no 2 cases are the same. There's similarities there, of course.
Well, nowadays they do have medication besides the what's the term? The one that they get infusion,
right?
Which is for the amyloid plaque,
right?
But if you're not in that category, then they have other medication I'm aware of. And nobody really knows if it helps or it doesn't help, because if you don't take it, you don't know what happens.
Yeah, because it's a progressive disease. It's hard to know.
So you take it and hope that it gives you more time, I guess, until a better solution comes along.
Yes, that's exactly right. And a lot of it is symptoms based. So it is important to have a great team of doctors, a neurologist, maybe a geriatrician, right? Where they're able to talk with families and really get to know, the individual with a diagnosis, to get them on the best mix of medications, if that's the right option for them, right? And it is just treating the symptoms, like the anxiety, maybe depressive symptoms, challenging behaviors. And I know that can be such a challenge for families as well, finding that right combination.
Is it, I think we're talking a lot about, so if someone is so a family member can just call you guys, walk us through the process, like how they kind of get linked to all these different services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Anyone can call us from the community. And usually we'll have someone referred through a doctor. Maybe they were just doing an internet search. But people will call us just for information. So if they're interested in the program, we give them all the information about the program. And usually I invite families to come and take a tour just to kind of see.
And I have to say, it's a beautiful center. I've had the privilege of taking a tour there. It's really a beautiful place.
Thank you. So we'll do that. We'll have people come in for a tour. And then if they're interested, we get them signed up for an intake. They come in, the diagnosed individual comes in with their caregiver, and we do sort of an assessment with them. But really, families will call us, they'll email us. They have, ways of contacting us through our website. And we like to tell families we're not only here just for the day program. If they need to call us and they need a doctor referral or they need a referral for a psychiatrist, we have all of that. And we also just have support. So if they want to come in and just talk with me or Melissa or one of our other team members about what's going on, they're more than welcome to do that. And then maybe they'll never use our services again. That's fine. But we were there for them in that moment.
Well, even the intake assessment part of it could be tricky as far as bringing somebody in there. Who maybe doesn't want to be there.
We try to make it as comfortable as possible. Mandy Klarman, who's a licensed clinical social worker, does the majority of our intakes, and I really think she has a very special way of trying to make it as comfortable as possible for the diagnosed and for the family.
I mean, because it's and I get it on their end. Like it's a scary, what is, I mean, there's just so many layers to it, as you said, and the fact that it isn't, this black and white kind of situation, makes it more complex because there's just so many different needs each person comes in.
It's kind of a pulling thing. The caregiver part of it, the caregiver wants as much help as they can get. And the person who has the problem doesn't really know they have a problem, I don't think. Maybe in some cases in the beginning you do, but eventually I don't think you realize. My opinion, not based on any medical, anything.
No, I think
it's just Otto's words of wisdom.
Yeah,
It's really,
So there's a difference of what the motivations are. One person's looking for help, the other one doesn't need any help because they want to be independent. So it causes a tugging of war contest.
Yes. No, it really can.
And the caregiver needs that help, but a lot of times people don't know where to turn, right? You get that diagnosis and then you're sort of in the dark on where you can go and who you can turn to. So.
Well, I mean, I've witnessed and have friends and we've talked and one of the biggest things, frankly, for a caregiver is to be able to keep your mouth shut at given times, all right? When you see an obvious, you're like, you might say, you said that already. You said that 14 times.
Right.
That's not the approach. But it takes time.
No, and to learn those tools, right? Because you're thrown into it. This is your husband, your wife, whatever it could be, that you're used to living one kind of way. And now it's this shift. So you kind of have to shift, and you're not born with that knowledge. But we will continue giving some more tips and tricks in the next segment. After the break, we will continue talking with Melissa Katz from the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center Senior Program of Programs and Services, and Emma Fogarty, who is the manager of Caregiver Services. And we're talking all things caregivers and just supporting the dementia patient around the holidays. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Otto Los. We're jumping right back in with Melissa Katz and Emma Fogarty from the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center. And we're just talking about, ways to support the caregiver and the dementia client, as well. It's certainly two ends of the...
Well, one of the items we hit on right at the end was the sometime maybe frustration for the caregiver to learn to not say, you already said that, or we did that before, or here's how you shut the light off, which you already talked about multiple times before. to learn that that person is not the same person that you were dealing with a year ago or whatever.
Yep.
And it's difficult for people to go through learning, frankly, is what it is. Go back to education and planning. You have to learn what to do.
Yeah, it's a learning experience, certainly. And I always tell caregivers, when they're going through that and they're going through the diagnosis and things are, starting up and they're going through this with their loved one, it is grieving, right?
You're
There's a
right,
lot of grief
absolutely.
involved. There is a lot of loss involved. So on top of that, they have to, try to be patient and try to change their tone and, do all of those things. And that combined is really difficult because we are all human and we get frustrated and we get upset. And, this isn't, the same person that maybe you had that relationship with before.
These are all the things like on-the-job training. There was nothing, you didn't have anything about parenting or caregiving or grieving when you went to high school.
No, you did not.
Right.
Or college.
It's all learning by doing.
On-the-job training.
And it's trial and error also, right? What might work one day by trying to, divert their attention or, positive distraction, right? If they're repeating things or if they're really focusing on, something happening that they're upset about, right? One day it might work to say, oh, wait, why don't we, listen to this song or let's see what movies on, television, for example, and that might work one day. And the next day, maybe it doesn't. And that's why it's so hard and does take so much patience. And, caregivers are humans too. And some days might be easier to manage than others.
Well, I mean, I've again, family-wise, have had exposure and frustration about things like hygiene are major. Take a shower and they come up with a lot of ways of making it look like they took a shower, but they didn't.
Right.
And any answers?
Yeah, and it can take family caregivers, maybe a year or so to even realize that's happening, right? So if they're going into the shower, maybe they're just getting wet, right? They're that cognitive decline, and maybe they're forgetting to then use soap wherever it is, and they don't know that they're not taking a proper shower. It can take a long time for families to notice. Same with brushing teeth, right? We just assume that someone remembers to brush their teeth until we realize, right, that they're not. I ran all the support groups for about 10 years before I became a supervisor. And now Emma runs all the groups that we have, the support groups for families. And this comes up every week, right? You're talking about this. So go for it. If there's anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody goes through this whole process without that being an issue.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely comes up.
It comes weekly, daily.
It comes up for sure every week in at least one of my support groups. And it's tough because some caregivers have to even resort to using cloths or some sort of they use what's called scrubbies, which is sort of a no rinse wash, and they'll do that because I do have caregivers whose loved ones haven't taken a shower in 6 months, and it's they just can't get there. Sometimes though we do talk about hot and cold can be sort of changed in the brain, so that temperature regulation can be changed.
But you have to get into the shower.
Exactly. So we'll talk sometimes about making it a spa day. So getting a nice comfy robe and making it nice and warm and things like that. But that doesn't always work. So it's a lot of trial and error. It doesn't always work.
But I think that's why, it's so important to, have you guys on the show and for organizations like you, because I think what all these things that Otto's bringing up are, real life, caregiver experience, that you've had. And I think it is just so isolating and you feel so many feelings of guilt and not knowing, so it's so important for the caregiver. I feel like, even more so sometimes than the actual person who's going through it, particularly to know how to navigate this new world. I just can't even fathom it.
You get to a line, I think, where you say, I can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
Right.
You really do get.
Yeah, it's like an acceptance.
Get to a point like that,
Definitely. That's why it's great that there's other help out there, right? Whether it's using home care, because sometimes it can work that if the primary caregiver is the one to say, all right, we got to get in the shower. Like, nope. But if an adult child
Right.
tries, maybe it works on
Yeah,
that given day.
so
And then
true.
sometimes even like
Yeah.
a paid, caregiver who are trained to do this, maybe they happen to have a magic touch, and it might depend on the day, right? Who happens to have the magic
Yeah,
touch that
right.
clicks
Yeah,
that
I
day,
mean,
'cause
it
it's not
ties
the
in
same.
all kinds of
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
clothing,
Yep.
what you wear, how
Yeah.
often you change it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's just, did you wash your hair?
Mhm.
Oh yeah. They didn't wash
Mhm.
their hair.
Mhm. Right.
It's
Yeah.
the way it is.
And family caregivers are thinking about these things all day,
Right.
right?
I
So
was
they're taking
just,
care
I was literally
of
just
it.
thinking about like how much,
Yeah.
you're trying to,
Yeah.
keep up with your own life and things that go on, and then you have like this whole like new person
Yeah,
to,
that's
Well,
what we
I,
say.
Yeah.
I think there's certain times where you just have to get to a point where you say, look, I can only do so much about
No.
this.
Right. This isn't
Otherwise,
today's
drive
problem,
yourself-
maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And knowing when you need to ask for help or
Mhm.
when you need
Yep.
someone maybe to help you out. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I mean, it's on caregivers' minds 24/7 what's going on with their loved one.
Yeah.
It's
And then, looking over all of your services, what
Mhm.
I love about, and I say with Project Independence, we try to do that too, is that there's no kind of like wrong way to come into the program, right?
Right.
And I think setting up that kind of setting is so important and makes people feel more comfortable. And I was looking through, I know you had some new kind of programs in 2025. So I love like these creative things that you were coming up with. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was one thing Melissa and I kind of put together recently in the past year that we noticed, we run 6 different support groups. So I find that support groups can be really helpful for caregivers because they're with other people who are going through similar things. It kind of relieves that guilt a little bit because they know other people are going through that too and making the same decisions. But support groups aren't for everyone.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to be a part of a support group or wants to, go in and talk about, the sad stuff or the stuff that's going on. So we started this program called the Caregiver Social Series, where monthly we have some sort of a social program for caregivers. So our caregivers are welcome to come in. We don't have to talk about anything too, deep or sad. We don't have to get into all of that, but they're together and they're doing some sort of social activity. So we've done yoga. I just did a bingo activity this week.
Bingo's always ahead. Can
Oh,
we
yeah.
bingo?
Oh, yeah. We got some good prizes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's all you need.
We'll do like flower arranging. So we do all of these different
Oh, that's so
programs for the
nice.
caregivers so that they feel like they have a place they can come and do an activity. And if they're not connected to us, if their loved one doesn't attend program, again, like Melissa said, they're welcome to bring them for the hour just so they can get out and they can have something to do and, be around other people who are going through the same thing.
I
Yeah.
So
when you
awesome.
used the word talk in there somewhere along the line, and I think being able to talk about it,
Yeah.
whether it be with family, friends,
Mhm.
your own mini support group,
Mhm.
or a more organized support group,
Yep.
is very, very important. You have to get it off your chest, if you will.
Yeah, you really do have to.
Yeah.
And finding the right people to
and
talk
the
to.
distraction piece, and that's what I love about this because
Yeah.
I even know like with my own mom, and I talked on the show, she's been dealing with like breast cancer stuff, and my mom's like not the support group. She doesn't want to like talk about her illness all the time. And that's always just been her, right? So my mom's way more on like the distraction, like let's like do things. So I think like that could be equally as beneficial a lot of time for people. When I was looking at all these, kind of things, and you keep it seasonal. So it's just like a light kind of fun thing. I saw there was I mean, that's right up my alley. I was like, sounds great. I was like, look at all these programs. I was like, I'm about to just go and hang out at Lion. But I just think that it's so cool that you guys like realize that, like, to create that kind of space, because I think that takes a lot of pressure off for people too, to come in and to join and just have like a little fun, and it's free, which I think is so important to really.
Another
Yeah,
area of difficulty for caregivers, medication. A, setting it up so somebody's going to take it, and B, somebody taking it
Yeah. Making sure they take it, right?
without having to be there monitoring it all the time. That's one of the things, is the monitoring part.
Yeah.
But you really have no choice.
No, there's so many things to think about, as we were saying before, like so many things to think about, their day to day, the activities of daily living, right? Something like taking medication. Are they taking it? Are they not? Right? That takes up so much space in your mind day to day, even at night, right? If they're getting up during the night, things that you're thinking about during the night, right? And this is why something like a social series, we do a lot of caregiver education too, like webinars, seminars. We have guest speakers that come to talk about, certain topics, say medication, how to get someone to bathe, right? Like elder care attorneys, long-term care options, right? What Medicare covers. There's a lot of misconceptions there about what Medicare covers. So we try to provide as much education as possible, because it doesn't just come with a handbook, right? All right, this is what you have to do
Well,
every
point
day.
Medicare, I
We
know
do as
people
much as
who think, oh,
possible.
yeah, they're going to go to a nursing home or
Yeah.
whatever. Medicare will take care of it.
Nope.
Medicare's not going to pay one penny.
Nope,
No.
unfortunately not.
No.
So we try to prepare these family caregivers as much as possible to prevent, any sort of crisis, right? Or financial crisis.
That's another
This.
whole department,
Yeah.
Then they say, okay, Medicaid. And the reality there is that a lot of people will not qualify for Medicaid,
Yeah.
no matter how they twist these things around.
Yeah, and a lot of people can, but it could be expensive working with an elder care
Right, to
attorney,
figure out how to
right?
do
And
it.
not everyone has access to that, to those means
Yeah, but
as
you
well.
may do that and
Yeah.
then find out you don't qualify.
Yeah, it's
So
a
there's
tough
a
one.
service that is, I can't remember who runs it, but anyhow,
Yeah,
there are services
Yep.
around that will
There are.
say yes, no.
right.
I
to
think
help
that's
here.
important to know, frankly.
Definitely. So
Yeah.
we actually host free consultations at our center with like an elder care attorney and even a
that's
financial
awesome.
Oh,
planner.
yeah, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yep, and even with a financial planner, we had someone there yesterday meeting with family caregivers just to talk through these things to see what the best options are. So we try to cover it all because
Yeah,
Well-
majority of
Yeah.
the elder care attorneys that we work with do free consultations, and they,
Yeah.
make that known, and they'll come in and they'll do presentations, and they'll even say, if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, you can give me a call. And, they're willing to sit down with someone and just kind of go over, if you were to put your money in a
Yeah,
trust,
I mean,
would
that's
that
so
work for
huge, right?
you?
Yeah.
If you were to move your money around, would it work for you or would it not? And so you have that answer before you're spending
Before you're
all of
doing
that
all
money
that.
on a lawyer,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a
I've
tough
been
one.
there.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, the whole idea of being able to talk about it with the person, the caregiver and the loved
Yeah.
one, is critical for reasons like you just talked about. You may have to change your will.
Yep.
Maybe the person who was your executor is no longer capable of being your executor,
Yeah.
or your healthcare proxy, or
Right.
anything else
Yes,
that goes
you
along
want to
with it.
make sure all these things are in place, that there's a power of attorney. Yep,
Right.
it doesn't have cognitive decline, is also, very important. So we are always referring to, elder care attorneys and consults, that consultants that do this. 'Cause it's
And
so
making
That's where-
sure that, making sure that the person who's diagnosed has a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy.
Right.
Because those are situations we've
Yeah.
encountered where someone doesn't have a power of attorney, something might happen, or, they're incapacitated and now the family isn't able to make decisions for them. So making sure all of that's in place, planning before a crisis happens.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
I'm saying, and that you just hit, like it's just like what we started with. It's just so important to plan as much as you can. Obviously, things come up, we can't plan for everything. As much as I would certainly love to have it
But
all
there's
just mapped
two
out.
things though that come into this in my judgment. All right, denial that you're in this situation,
Yeah,
and
Right.
the fact that you're not accepting that this is really what the deal is, and the other one is just plain old procrastination.
Right.
Maybe you do know, and you
Right, just too overwhelming sometimes, and I get, a lot of people, and I've been there too. It's like the idea of it is just like, it's too overwhelming that you just can't even face it. But, I
Yep.
think that, I'm a firm believer, as we said, you could only eat an elephant one bite at a time is Otto's go-to thing. And it's really something to like, to realize that, kind of dipping your toe in and, starting getting education. You guys have that beautiful like little library room with all referral, like
Yeah, we
resources and
do.
stuff. And I think like, just that initial step of like, just, understand talking to one of you, who, don't make it as, take away some of the scariness of it, and just kind of walk you through these steps is just why it's so important to reach out and to get help. And I want to, what is the best contact number?
Oh, sure. So we have 516-767-6856.
Okay, great.
And when someone calls, they'll be connected to one of the 5 like licensed social workers to talk with them through this process and whether it's one referral, one number that they need, or they just got a diagnosis, they don't know where to start, or maybe it's later, right? And something came up. We will help them through, this process as much as possible.
So
Very
so
valuable
incredible.
service.
No, it is, because I just, as I sit here and I listen, like, I just can't even imagine, being in that situation. It's just, and especially when, that you had mentioned this at our advisory too, like, there's a lot of people who get diagnosed at a young age too.
Yes.
So then that even, it's not just, an aging kind of thing that could happen. So it's like, there's just so many different layers to it. And, especially I just think about the caregiver having to do all that.
Yeah,
One of the other things I think that happens that I've witnessed with a caregiver is that the things that the person liked to do before, like read or, whatever they like to do, all of a sudden they don't do it.
Yes.
So now it becomes more idle time, if you will, where somebody basically kind of sits, sleeps, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's hard to watch.
It is hard to watch, absolutely. And that's why, like, coming to a day program, we try to, convince people to try it, even if they don't think it's for them, because we do a lot of art therapy, music therapy. We have pet therapy. We have golden retrievers that come in. We have mini horses from Horseability, down the road come in. They're amazing. I mean, they come into the center, right? So we try to get creative as much as possible to try to hit those interests.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take another break. After the break, we will continue talking with Melissa Katz from the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center, Senior Director of Programs and Services, and Emma Fogarty, who is the Manager of Caregiver Services, all about, ways to support the dementia caregiver around the holidays. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
So I get this call from my grandma, and she's like,
"What's a podcast, and how much does it cost?"
So I tell her, podcasts are like radio shows, but you can download them on any device and listen to them anywhere at any time, and they're free. And then she says,
"I see, but where can you find good ones?"
And I'm like, go to wcwp.org/podcast and check out the lineup of original shows, or download any podcast app on your phone or tablet and search for LIU Studios. And she's all like,
"Oh, that sounds easy."
And then she asked me what an app is.
LIU Studios podcasts, available on any podcast app. Those little button things on your phone screen. Just ask your grandkids.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Otto Los, and we're jumping right back in with Melissa Katz and Emma Fogarty, who are from the Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center. And we're just been talking all things and support services that are out there. But of course, we are in the holiday season, which can be such a lovely, joyous time, and I think we're all used to watching, TV shows and movies and everything is, I still just want my bakery, like the van that has
Hallmark always
pies.
ends up good no matter
Yeah,
what.
I mean, it's like, believe me, and so you can get very sucked into the expectations of how things should look, and it's like everything's perfect, right? And all tied up in a lovely little bow. But in preparing for this, and I was reading obviously about how huge planning is, and in your notes too, it's just the idea of managing the expectations, which is, I think, in general something that I try and think, because it's easy to you don't want to get let down in certain situations, and then that just causes more stress for everyone involved. So give us some tips about just caregiving around the holidays and kind of navigating your your holiday gathering.
Yeah, I mean, it's particularly difficult for caregivers around the holidays because, as you said, it looks very different. Those same traditions might not be possible. We talk about how, sometimes caregivers can't make it to a holiday function because it might be too overwhelming for the person who's diagnosed, that they might not be able to get out. So, having family members that understand that. And a big thing, we talk about is the family dynamics piece of, what can your family do around the holidays to help you out, and how can they be there for you? And it might be something really simple, like, you just need a phone call, or, they can bring something over, they can make something, or they can do something really small. But checking in with yourself and knowing what you need as a caregiver, and kind of being able to communicate that to your family, is helpful during the holiday season, because we know it's an overwhelming time of year
in
for
general,
everyone.
right.
Yeah. And so as a caregiver, it's especially overwhelming and, can be, filled with a lot of grief, like I was talking about earlier, just in the way things are different.
Well, one of the things you have in some of the materials sent us is that, okay, we have this situation. So now we used to send 800 Christmas cards and we used to do so many gifts and we used to have all these decorations. Maybe you can't do all that.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
keeping it
Right.
simple as much as possible
Yeah.
and maybe having too many people, right, in one house can be very overstimulating for someone with a diagnosis. So maybe keeping it smaller. Maybe, right, it's possible for someone to take their loved one to an adult child's house, friend's house, whatever it is. Maybe not. Maybe it's better that family stops in instead. So I think it's so important as someone supporting a caregiver, right, to ask them what they need, what would help you, right, to get through Christmas, Hanukkah, right, New Year's, whatever it is, for this time of year, right? We can't always assume we know even what a caregiver needs, right? Because it's so different case to case. And then I think it's also important for the family caregiver, right, to really try to vocalize their needs as well, and we can hope that family and friends will be understanding of that, but then family dynamics come in and some people understand it more than others.
Yeah.
But I think it's just important for people to, really communicate as much as possible, what they need and how someone can help, and then vice versa, right? Asking a family caregiver what they need and what can help during this
But
time.
they might not tell you.
No, they may
So,
not.
Your notes include a few things like offering to do small errands,
Yeah.
whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Pick up a prescription at the drugstotore.
Oh, yeah.
It can be something so
Right.
small.
Yeah.
Do the dish, come over and do the dishes.
Yeah.
It can be
The
something
dishes
so
are a good
tiny
thing.
like that.
Yeah,
Otto
right.
said, sign me up for that one. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Tidy up a room.
Yeah.
Oh,
If
yeah.
it's a family member,
Yep.
Just knowing. And, one of the things that can be helpful is if they just sit with the loved one and they talk and they give the caregiver some time, especially at, a family event or something like that. A big thing I talk about, in terms of family dynamics and around the holidays and big events, is, letting your family know that it's okay to talk to the person who's diagnosed. And
I'm so glad you
it's
said that.
important to
Yeah.
talk to the person who's diagnosed, right? I mean, even if they're not responding to your questions or they don't necessarily really know the context of the conversation, they're aware that, someone's including them in the conversation, and that's a really important thing.
No, and I think, all these things that you're even, the tips and everything are just something I even think can apply to just life in general, when you have like an aging person, in a holiday thing, we've talked about on the show too, it can be very overwhelming, it can be very loud, and I remember that with my own grandfather, a lot of times, I was lucky, I had a very, very close relationship with him, but, I recognized like how important it was to like include him in the conversation. I think everyone, we're like a loud family, everyone's talking so fast, everyone's talking about 10,000 different things.
Right.
And then that person can often just be invisible, at the table. And there's literally nothing worse than feeling, that way at a function. So I do think, it's so important. And I think you're right too. Like some people just, especially if you're younger, you might be kind of scared and not sure how to like navigate that situation, So I think it is, just to find a way to include that person and whatever that might look like is just, something so simple and so important, really.
But as we've talked in the past, sometimes that problem is created because the person has a hearing problem.
Yeah.
Also, that's what I'm saying, like with age, like
They
just
didn't
in
do
general,
something to
Yeah.
like,
take care of it.
even outside of any kind of cognitive
Yep,
thing, I think
definitely.
these things are just, so
How
important.
about meals and food? Like cooking, all of a sudden, the people who have the issue shouldn't really cook and probably don't cook. And that leaves it to the caregiver.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing wrong with people bringing a nice meal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's
Yeah.
a really, really great way to support a caregiver throughout the year, but especially, during this time. I think is great. And there's other meal services out there too, right? Whether it's through
Meals on
local agencies, Meals on Wheels. There's even, people can pay out of pocket for other, meal delivery services. So we try to, connect families as much as possible for whatever it is, that they need.
And to speak to what you said kind of about, the caregiver having to take on, making meals and that sort of thing. I think one thing people don't realize about caregivers is that, yes, they're taking on the responsibility of caregiving, but they're also taking on the responsibility of anything that person was taking care of in the house. So whether that's finances, something as small as taking out the trash, right? All of that builds up, and it becomes extra things on the caregiver's plate. So, that's something that small that someone can do to help them out.
It's there's again, let's talk about the things that you do. You have to now drive somebody everywhere, because they can't or shouldn't, which is another topic.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But we're talking about food, and I was just looking up because I wanted to have the correct name, because it came across our desk, and I actually was working on scheduling for the show. It's an organization called Lasagna Love.
Oh.
And it's super cool. It's it's a bunch of volunteers, because a lot of people say, oh, I don't want Meals on Wheels. You want like a hot, like lasagna kind of thing. And they offer, and there's a whole bunch around, and our Project Independent social workers and nurses have been like referring people to that, especially around this time of year. I think it's nice to have that, kind of, comfort, that
like some good lasagna.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, everyone, please, I would love a lasagna to be delivered to me, but I do, and it's cool that it's like local volunteers that are doing it too. So and I think it's important to realize that there's a lot of even houses of worship and stuff, and finding different things. And obviously, you could always call us at Project Independence, and we can connect you to Liad services as well. And it's just I think it goes back to, it takes a village, these things, and in general it does, and especially when you're dealing with something like this, it's so important.
Well, the another magic word in my belief is, when you talk with a caregiver, is to listen to what the caregiver is saying, as opposed to, and I've witnessed this, right away spouting about how Charlie, who had 14 of these things and whatever. Right away you were like playing Can You Top This, as far as your problem is you got another person with a bigger problem. That's not going to.
So you've been in my family functions. Okay.
Well, that comes up in group, right? I mean, even there are times where someone's talking and they'll say, well, what I'm dealing with isn't as, huge as what you're dealing with. And I always remind caregivers that, there's no competition there, right?
No.
Caregiving is really difficult no matter what situation that you're in. And although every situation isn't going to be the same, the grief that you're feeling is still the same, and the burden that you're feeling is still the same. So,
Yeah, I think the word you've had in here a lot of times is frustration. There's a lot of frustration connected, as I've witnessed, with this type of thing. You wish it could be different, but it can't be.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So now you got to contend with what is, not what you would like it to be.
Yeah, and we have to sort of join their world as much as possible, right? As things change, and we could try to understand and intellectualize it as much as possible and understand their symptoms, but we truly have to meet them where they are in that moment, as opposed to trying to bring them back to what they used to do. And we have to sort of join them in their world and what's their reality, at the time. And that's not an easy thing to do.
They didn't choose this.
No.
This is not something they dreamed about. Like, how can I get everybody to help me?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work like that.
One thing I just want to mention too, because we talked a lot about group activities and the great social series that Emma's doing now. We also have individual counseling as well that we started a few years ago. That's a newer service as well. So the group setting is not for everyone, but if someone needs that extra help, we do have individual mental health counseling. And that one is billable through Medicare Part B and a handful of other private insurances.
Medicare Part B.
Correct. Like any other sort of mental health therapy would be. We have Jillian Viap, who's a clinical social worker, works one-on-one, and she also works with couples as well. So maybe someone who has a very recent diagnosis, maybe they're still working, still driving, she'll work with a couple together to help them navigate through the very early stages, as long as it's, still appropriate for them, to talk about it. They have to sort of have awareness of it. So we have that service as well, I like to mention.
Which is excellent, frankly. I mean, would you call the same phone number?
Yep, same phone number. Right. Yeah, to get
Suppose
involved with
somebody
that.
says, okay, yes, that person would like the individual counseling.
Yeah.
Can they bring a couple of people with them?
Yeah,
Like
so that
family
would
members?
be yep, so you would speak to Jillian about that directly, and she would do a mini assessment and see what the best plan of action is to have someone else, yep, involved in the counseling there. If someone has a diagnosis, there usually is, yep, there
Yes.
would need to be a family member
yeah,
involved.
talking about the person who has the problem.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. So we would make sure that it was the best scenario, and she would, doing a little assessment to see who else would be involved in the counseling for that.
And that's even something where, maybe counseling isn't the best option, but if there's a situation going on, in the family, or you want to talk about it with the family, we will do those consultations with family members to bring, you can bring people in, and we can all kind of sit and have a discussion with the family.
Yeah, and care plan all together to see.
No, because I
plan
think
of
too,
action.
it's like a family, disease really, right?
Yes.
So like you need everyone is being affected in so many different ways. And I think,
Yeah.
in general, just getting everyone kind of on the best plan, and, at Project Pens, we have like our circle of support booklet, that, it's really just to, like I said, I just can't say it. I'm like a broken record, but like just the planning of all these things, and especially in this situation, is just so huge, and just kind of like knowing where to go. We always like who, what's in your toolbox.
Right, right, and we have a lot of fun things too, because we want to show that there's life.
Yes, and I think I think
right?
that is we're big proponents of the importance of laughing and socializing, and I do think that it has. I mean, that's how my family copes with mostly everything.
I mean, everybody sooner or later faces something.
Right. No, and these are all
Breast
things that
cancer
you could use.
or-
Right.
You really have, not to me, not too many options. You
Right.
got to handle what comes along if you
Yeah.
can, and if you
Right.
need help to do it,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah.
Asking for
definitely.
help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think,
definitely.
of course, we always throw around the term self-care. And if you could just give us some, we
Sure,
love golden
self-care.
nuggets on this show, like for caregivers, like what are some self-care options?
Absolutely. So we think of course, anything to do that we enjoy, right? That gives us that little bit of a break from caregiving. That could be something as simple as taking care of our own needs, like haircut, right? People enjoy their manicures. Maybe it's going for a walk, but then it's also more than that, right? It's making sure that we're going to our own appointments and taking care of our health and not letting those things slip by, because that can really happen. Finding out who's in your circle, right? Socializing, talking with people, maybe going for a walk with someone, right? So it doesn't feel like you're just, I have to exercise and take care of myself, right? If you're able to talk with a friend, it's a little simpler, right? So anything that it is that you enjoy doing, and it could be 5 minutes long, it can be an hour long, maybe it's going away for a weekend to visit a friend or a family member, or taking a trip. And I know that's not feasible, for everyone, but right, finding that balance between caregiving 24/7, right? And then taking that little bit of time, because you need to recharge so that you're better able to take care of your loved one again, right? It's sort of like that airplane analogy, putting on your oxygen
yeah,
mask
right,
first,
absolutely.
right? Same sort of thing when it comes to family caregiving as well. Yeah.
If someone wants to get involved with LIAD, and supporting and helping, what can they do?
Yeah, we have lots of different options, right? So we have volunteers that help in our day program. We have volunteers that help at our fundraisers. We are a private nonprofit organization, so we do rely on donations, and our big fundraisers, we have 4 a year. So maybe it's joining a committee, maybe it's helping on that day, right? Maybe it's sending a $5 donation. Maybe someone's involved with a larger family foundation, right? Where they can give more regularly. We are grateful for any penny that comes through our door, because it goes directly into our hands-on programs that is in Westbury, right? So through town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, so people can truly see, where it's going. And I know a lot of people like that, right?
Yeah,
All
that's
of our
awesome.
hands-on services that we have is what we're raising, money to do and to keep doing as much as possible.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
backtrack for a second.
Sure.
Talk about time that caregivers have. And if you look at people as they get older, my friends included, which I happen to be older,
Never. Not you, Otto.
you spend a lot of time on medical and dentist appointments.
Yeah.
All right. And if you have somebody who has a real issue, you're going to have more time on even
Right.
normal stuff leads to, oh, you have to go to the urologist. Okay. So now you have 18 appointments to go to the dentist because if you don't take care of your teeth, you're going to have more problems.
Yeah.
So is there any suggestion in terms of like
a time management?
Yeah, but the problem is you really need to have somebody with the person.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to retain what anybody says.
Yeah, I really think it's just finding a balance of taking care of appointments, doing those necessary things, but also social, right? So doing something fun together. Like we have a dementia chorus, for example, right? Where the caregiver and the diagnosed sing together. We have a performance tomorrow that we're hosting at the Bethpage Senior Center. If anyone's interested, they could call, our number, that 516-767-6856, that we have a
Otto, I'm
holiday
signing you up, my friend.
Remember, we have a holiday performance,
that's
right?
not
So finding that balance between the necessities and then socializing as well.
Well, you guys, I mean, you are true angels and you're doing such wonderful things. And I hope we helped anyone that was listening today. We would like to thank our guests today, Melissa Katz and Emma Fogarty, for such wonderful information. We would also like to thank everyone who has joined us. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.